This podcast is sponsored by Magic Rock Brewing. Currently, you can get free delivery on all orders over £40 and 10% of all online orders by using our code of TakesThatChance10.
Christopher Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Play down the left and Moy stayed onside. Here's Mounier! 2-0 Huddersfield Town on the opening day of the Premier League. 1-2 wicket Tunga. Here's Moy, right-footed. 1-0 Huddersfield Town. Lindelof misses his header. De Quattro's in. Round De Gea. 2-0 Huddersfield Town. 2-0 Huddersfield Town. Here's Zanka to turn it into the pass. Yes! And Tommins scored. Tommins has scored one of the most important goals of Huddersfield Town's history. De Quattro's forward. De Quattro's got the better. Yes! And Laurent De Quattro scores. Laurent De Quattro scores.
Welcome to Andy Takes That Chance, the warm-up. This week, the lads look forward to welcoming the royally named Queen's Park Rangers to our iFollow screens. Joining myself, the court jester Matt Shaw, to preview the game, we have stroking his corgi, and only that, is the Baron of Barechester, Brady Frost. And holding the prediction crown at the moment is Chris the Marquess Markham. So, hey chaps, how are you doing?
Good evening, mate. All right?
Yeah, very good. This Saturday, we take on Queen's Park Rangers, a club that we haven't played a lot in the past. The two sides have only met on 35 occasions, with the majority coming over the last 20 years. Town have won 13, QPR 13, and there have been 9 draws, so nicely balanced. 28 league games have been contested, and 24 of those have been in the second tier. Never have we met QPR in the top or bottom tiers, and only 4 games in League One. This week's memorable game, so my most memorable game of Huddersfield Town and QPR, I did enjoy the Wagner one where Kachunga scored the header, to put us 2-0 up at home. But my home game against QPR, which is the memorable one, goes back to the 21st of April 2001. Two sides staring down the barrel of a relegation gun from the second tier. A very good player who Chris has highlighted as a player to bring back in the past, I think. Dean Gorey put Huddersfield 1-0 up with a deflected shot before Andy Thompson equalised for QPR. And then just as the game looked to be heading towards a draw, Andy Booth Mark II didn't often get in behind defences to get in on one-on-one. And he had his shot saved, and it just fell beautifully for Delroy Facey to tap it in the last minute. And Huddersfield, unfortunately, relegated on the last game of the season against Birmingham. But at that point, it looked like we were heading for safety, and that actually consigned QPR to League One. Great game. Brady, you won't remember that. You'll have probably been still wearing shorts, 2 or 3 5 years old, 6, 7 years old would you have been then? And Chris, you might remember that one.
2007, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember it. I was obviously more remember the end of the season, but yeah, Delroy was that his season, was it?
It was kind of, he started really with Boothie, and he had a good partnership with Peter Runlove at one point in that season.
Yeah.
Very good. Right then, so that's a little bit of insight into, and I believe we're unbeaten in 5 games against QPR as well, which is interesting, which Brady will go into in a bit more detail as Brady gives us the lay of the castle and brings us up to date with how Queen's Park Rangers have been doing more recently.
Yeah, so again, it's like the Cardiff game going into the game. They're a place below us. They're 17th and have 17 points. We have 18. What's quite interesting is QPR have only won once on the road this season, and that was to Derby County, 1-0. Again, not that special, this judging on this season. They've lost to Coventry away and Barnsley away and drew at Wednesday. So, again, not having a great time on the road. Only won once in the last 5 matches. They were actually ahead in midweek against Bristol City, but lost the match 2-1. And I'm sure we'll come on to it, chaps, but they're a bit like Town, really. They're really inconsistent. So I've actually spoken to 2 QPR fans this week, one who we'll hear in the podcast a little bit later, but also one for our match preview article. And the gist I kind of got from is they're a bit like us. They need about 10 chances to score. But but they also concede far too frequently and easily. So it's a lot of effort for them to actually score, and then they just give goals away too easily. But yeah, I kind of looked at the highlights of Brentford and Bristol, and they actually were dominating for quite long periods of the game and end up losing. So it could be a bit of an interesting one. As you kind of mentioned at the top of it, Matt, we're unbeaten in the last 5. It was one of the last games I went to before lockdown, was the QPR home game in February. And it was 2-0 win. It was pretty comfortable for us, really. So could be a bit interesting, this one.
Yeah, so we'll look into the strengths and weaknesses of QPR. Brady, you made a good start in doing that. So from my take on QPR, they're a short passing side who play an open and expansive style. Mark Warburton's been around the second tier and been up in Scotland for a little bit, and he's very renowned for having his ideals, if you like, and sticking to his principles. Play out from the back. Very similar, like you're right, Brady. Very similar in style to what we are. They're probably just a bit slower than what we are. We tend to look a bit, get forward a bit quicker than what they do. A 4-2-3-1, expansive, leaving gaps here and there. Most of their attack comes down the right flank through Bright Osei Samuel, according to percentages, who almost left over the summer, almost left for $4.5 million, which would look a bit of a snip at the minute. Chris Willock has started to play left side for them as well, and Ilias Chair, very creative behind Lyndon Dykes as well. So the majority of the goals they get are in open play. They've only scored 6 away from home, which includes 2 penalties and 1 set piece, so 3 open play goals there. So they're not quite as creative on the road. And this game, to me, looks like much will depend on Harry Toffolo and his ability to keep Osei Samuel quiet. And in terms of weaknesses, they've conceded a wide spread of goals from open play, set pieces, and from being countered as well. So they do seem quite fragile across the board rather than a sort of a one-size-fits-all approach to scoring against them. What have you picked up on Queen's Park Rangers, Chris?
Like you've both described, really. If you're looking at it from just purely from a stats point of view, which is always dangerous, by the way, but they're quite middle of the table for a lot of stuff. I think they're one of the main things I thought, maybe a little bit contradictory to what you said, Matt, was I think that they have a bit better of a balance to their possession than us. So we have the second least amount of our possession is in the final third of the opponent, and theirs is 4th most, even though they are a possession team. So I think they play their football higher up the pitch and in better areas than us most of the time. And again, they're a high crossing team, although very different type of crossers and very different type of personnel to the last 2 teams that we've spoken about as being crossing teams. And they also have a good balance to where they shoot from. So 29% of their shots outside the box is the second lowest percentage. So obviously they're not wasteful. They do try and work it into better areas, which obviously does create better chances. Whether or not they're that good at finishing them is probably another thing. Like you mentioned, though, I do think they're vulnerable. I think they're interesting in terms of that they conceded the most set play goals this season. They're the only team who's conceded more than us so far. So I think that's going to be a big area, and obviously, hopefully, that's one that we can exploit. And I just, I think they're a team that there's reason to like them in terms of looking at them. Like say, I like Mark Warburton as a manager generally, but they do look fragile as well. So yeah, I think those would be the main things for me. There's a couple of bits to like, but they're definitely a team we can get at.
And there's a couple of players we like. Brady, go on. Sorry,
Matt. Just to jump in. I've not had a chance to verify it yet, but Loft for Words, who's done our match preview article, he said last season they conceded the most goals from headers, set pieces, crosses, corners, and conceded the most penalties. So again, that taps into what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm pretty sure Town conceded the most set pieces, didn't they, from in the league by quite some distance as well last season, but I think they were definitely up there, QPR.
Yeah, again, they look same as you said there, Brady, for headers and stuff. Having looked through some of the games, they do look fairly weak when it comes to that. And over the last 8 matches, they've conceded the second most goals in the league. So, like, nearly 2 a game they're conceding. So, like I say, it's an opportunity to get at them. But we've only won 1 in the last 4 at home, and they've won 1 in the last 4 away. So there is something to give both teams, not coming into it, like you said, with that consistency. So not with that confidence, really.
Sounds like we might need to roll Boothie out of retirement there. Just one last time for this one, maybe. So we'll do a player focus now on QPR, and there's a number of players that we could focus on, but one person in particular has has struck a chord. When you sign from Scotland and it's not one of the big two clubs, people tend to look down their nose a little bit at the quality in the SPL, which for me is wrong, because I think there is some gold to be had up there if you are very clever and you can look through some of the kick and rush that some of the sides play. And one person in particular who plays for Scotland via Australia and via his parents is Lyndon Dykes. He's got 5 goals and 1 assist this season. A strong running player, holds the ball well, links reasonably well, although in terms of SofaScore, they say one of his weaknesses is holding onto the ball up front, but didn't look that way from visually watching him. Strong player, getting better week by week, Chris.
Yeah, I really like him. Saw him for really sort of burst on the scene a little bit in the last month or so with obviously getting Scotland to the Euros against Serbia. I thought that night he was absolutely outstanding in everything that he did, both for the team out of possession, but also in possession. Serbians tend to have a certain profile of big, strong, aggressive centre-backs. And to be honest, he bullied them absolutely every time, won everything in the air. It stuck up there with him. And it was quite interesting that in that game, when he went off and Ollie McBurney came on, who's now a Prem player who has ripped it up at this level, they looked a lot worse of a team. So for me, he could be one of these strikers. He's not going to, I think of his goals, he's had a couple of penalties in there. So he's not prolific from open play, but he's one of these that just gives so much to the rest of the team. And the 3 lads that play behind him in the 4-2-3-1 they'll love him. I'm sure they'll love him to bits, as the manager will. So for me, I just think he's going to be. It gives them that opportunity to mix it up, and I think if we deal with him and the supply into him and what he can do, I think it'll really negate the 3 behind him. So I think he's key to how we deal with it. We've said, we've come up against a few big strikers. We said Kiefer Moore last week, and then for the first goal, he's left on his own in the middle of the 6-yard box.
Criminal.
So, that's that. I think looking after Dykes is going to be crucial. And speaking of the 3 behind him, I know you've had a look, Brady, at Asai Samuel.
I think that was Matt, but
was it?
We both did. He was like the first one that popped out to both of us, really, wasn't he, Brady?
Yeah, I think he can kind of switch wings, so I think that could be a potential area of weakness for us, depending on who's playing at right back if he fancies it. But again, yeah, like you say, nearly moved in the summer. Still kind of, I think he's a bit of a contract talk saga going on there, but he's been really impressive for him, and he's absolutely rapid. I mean, I saw that goal they scored against Brentford in the defeat, and he just completely beats the left back for pace. So need to watch out for him. I think again, Chris Willock, he's been doing quite well there. I know we're not kind of mentioned him, but I think as well, again, could just be a one-off, but West Brom, when he played for us last season, he looked really fired up because he didn't really get a chance at West Brom. And I wonder, again, former team, point to prove, because we didn't sign him and we kind of had the chance if he might be one to watch as well.
I was going to make that point. That's really well thought out, Brady. So I'll give you kudos on that one. Right, okay. So let's focus on the boys a bit more. Let's focus on Huddersfield Town. So how do Huddersfield Town look to approach QPR? So like we've said, they play a similar style to QPR. Maybe in my eyes, a bit quicker, a bit more risky is what I think. So QPR seem a bit safer to me. So Town really need to really need to be on game with moving the ball quickly and accurately, which would help QPR. Would help overcome QPR, I should say. And I think breaking lines is going to be a really important method to get past them. Looking at some stats with regards to QPR, and they seem to be a side that concede a lot of shots in the box, not necessarily goals, but they give up a lot of chances inside the area. And Town are a side that can flood the area very quickly. And for me, so breaking lines, people moving from unorthodox positions is going to be quite key. So I think for us to get over QPR, if you like, I think we're going to have to see some unusual movement maybe, or something a little bit different, and 1 or 2 players moving into areas inside the box to try and take up some chances. What have you guys made? Brady, what have you made of, or what do you make of Town's makeup to take on QPR?
I think this is a team where we should get more chances, really, compared to some of the other opponents we made, because QPR are quite weak defensively, as we touched on, but also they leave quite a lot of space at times as well. And I think this is a game for me really where I think we could win this quite easily if we take our chances. I know that's a bit of a cliche, but we've got players in form. We'll kind of come on to our key players, but I think, Mbenza's playing well, Eiting's playing well, Karoma's playing well. I think they're, the players we kind of need to do well. And if they do get chances, I think, we could maybe have a half decent chance of converting them. So QPR, again, based on the fans I talked to, they don't really fancy it when they come up north. They don't really have a good record in general. I think this is a game, if we look at the kind of the fixture run, obviously we got Pulis is Wednesday in midweek, which I think will be a tough game. I think this is one you kind of look at on paper and think, oh, this is a good chance of getting 3 points.
Chris?
Yeah, I agree with that. We'll come on to that as well. We make our predictions a bit more detailed, but like you've pretty much picked it up there, Matt, in terms of they're conceding a lot of their shots in dangerous areas. So although they don't have a lot of shots outside the box, which is a plus, at the other end they concede a lot of shots from even inside the 6-yard box, they're second most, and even in the penalty box, like you've mentioned. So I think when I've gone and had a bit of an observation of the goals they've conceded, it's been an array really, as we mentioned, high for set pieces, but defending crosses, been a couple of own goals in there. They've given away penalties, quite rash, and I just think they're a team that if we can have our possession in better areas. So Mark Warburton's teams, they tend to be, I don't know what they'll be like, I haven't looked into them obviously in that detail at this stage, but they tend to want to press high. So if we can break that press first and play higher, which they try and do to us, there's no use us having the ball in our own third again. Obviously, we saw what happened on Tuesday again. So I think we need to try and play a bit higher up. And if we do play around their box, that's when we'll start getting joy.
Key players then, guys. So Brady, you're quite keen to get first dibs on the key player, aren't you? Who do you see as the man to unlock the QPR side?
I think I'm just a key in general, Matt. But I think Josh Karama will be our key player. He's scored 2 in his last 3 games at home. And I think this is a game for him to kind of grab a goal and, touched on him previously, but I think he's getting a good partnership with Mbenza. They seem to be quite pally now as well, off the pitch. And, we saw what we did against Borough, just kind of needs a chance. And, I think might have been us or it might have been one of Chicken or whatever. But I think that goal against Middlesbrough a couple of matches ago, he'd hit it in the shins, but it just goes in. And I think, I think he'll be the difference maker. I think he can pop up and get a goal or 2.
I was worried that we might have the same person, but we don't. Chris, do me and you have the same person? Let me know who you've got.
I've gone for the other winger who I think should come back into the team is Mbenza. One, because their left back is Lee Wallace, who's excellent on the ball. Obviously Rangers for a while, really good quality in attacking areas, but now he's knocking on a bit and his mobility will left something to be desired. So if you can get Mbenza against him one-on-one is one reason. The other reason is obviously we've mentioned set play has been important. I think Mbenza's had it's sometimes erratic set play delivery, but when he gets it right, it could really cause problems. So I'm not normally an advocate of picking a team just for set plays, but I think with that coupled with how we could get after Wallace could be a big key for us. Okay,
the player that I've picked is a player that's yet to hit last season's heights, really. But as I mentioned, breaking the ability to break lines is going to be key for me and to pop up in the box. And one player that I'm going to look to get into areas to score goals, because I think he would probably admit himself that he doesn't score quite enough at the minute, and that's Lewis O'Brien. So I think the ability to move the ball quickly and sharply is going to be key. And Lewis O'Brien is someone who can do that. He can press, he can carry short bursts, commit players and bring, an open gaps, open space. And I think Lewis will need to look to get into the box. And if he does, I think there's every chance that he could be on the score sheet. So Lewis O'Brien for me is my player that I will look to do something a little bit different. And that's to get into the box more and be the recipient of one of those chances that potentially QPR could give away. So 3 different players, which is good. So we've got a wide spread there, which is good to see, because at least we're not a team that's overly reliant on one. 3 years ago, I think everyone would say Aaron Moy every week. So, that's great to see. I'd say Aaron Moy in my other feature every week if I could. You say Aaron Moy now? Yeah, I just talk. I think I say it in my sleep, to be honest. Yeah. So let's go to our new feature, which has not quite been named yet. We've had one or two decent names, and we may finalise that before the next episode, or we may put a poll out to see what everybody thinks. A player that you bring back to win this game. So we're popping in our Jodie Whittaker's pop down with her TARDIS. We're going to pop inside, and we are going to go back in time, and we're going to bring somebody into this game to take on QPR. Chris, who have you picked this week to get the better of Queen's Park Rangers?
Are we going straight on to that, or are we going to review last week's poll winner first? I don't know.
We're going to move straight on to it, I think you got your mates. I'm sure my Ben Thornley suggestion was 20% in front at one point, and then it was. It seemed very sort of Joe Biden-esque how that just kind of ramped in with the postal votes.
I think, Chris, to be honest, politics into this podcast, but just in case anyone's in
Arizona doesn't count. I'm telling you.
Andy Morrison won by 1%, so
I can see why.
Yeah, I can see why. Didn't see that.
Yeah, I can see. Although Billing wasn't a great suggestion, was it? Was it, Brady? Really?
Well, I think it's rigged, isn't it?
It is if you mention Billing. That's not going to win, mate.
Oh no, definitely. I knew that wasn't going to win.
So my pick for this week, then, we've talked about obviously needing chances. We're going to get chances and being able to put them away when they come. So obviously we've had some fairly good goal scorers throughout different times. To be fair, certainly during while I've been watching.
I'm worried here. I'm worried we might have the same one, but go on.
I think the one I'm going to pick though is probably the one who sticks out in my memory. Probably was my favourite player for a long time when I was growing up through school, and that'd be Marcus Stewart.
No, that's yeah.
Just obviously. He's finishing around the box. He had the power. He could use both feet if needed. Maybe not the strongest in the air, but his movement just to find half a yard. And having watched some of the goals that QPR concede, and the different types of finishes that he had, I think he could really be one. Obviously, he then went on to do it in the Premier League when obviously the sale of the century was made. So yeah, for me it'd be Marcus Stewart. Going to get a few chances, I think, in this one, and if we had him, I think he'd put them away.
Yeah, that was my pick as well, Marcus Stewart, because I think against QPR you need a deft striker and someone with good movement in and around the box, and there was nobody better in Huddersfield Town's past 30 years, I would say.
Have you got a second one?
I'm racking. Do you know what? I'm going to go to. I've got a number of strikers.
I'll share the win, boys.
I've got a number of strikers in my head. John Newby's not going to be one of them, but I will roll this to Brady and then maybe come back to me and I'll make up my final.
Not to pick one.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll be Matt's filler, shall I? So QPR seem to be terrible at set pieces, and don't seem to defend whipping balls across the box well and corners and free kicks. Who was good at whipping balls in at set pieces?
Gary Roberts.
Corners and free kick. Gary Roberts.
Nice,
Gary Roberts. He had that grit as well. He was up for it. And again, I don't think we have many players in this side who are up for a bit of a fight. So I'm going Gary Roberts. I used to love Gary Roberts.
He
was playing in the Championship last season.
Absolute legend of a man. Probably the funniest man I've met in football.
Do you know what's embarrassing, Chris? When Gary Roberts played for us, I was in my 20s and I don't think I'd had a favourite player, really. Do you know when you're a kid, you have a favourite player? I don't think I'd had one for 10 years. And then Gary Roberts signed. And I was telling people, oh yeah, he's my favourite player. And you catch yourself and you're kind of going, what am I doing? Because I just used to love watching. His touch was phenomenal. Do you know how it would come down 20 yards out of the air and he would just kill it dead. Unbelievable. I think if he had pace, he would have been Premier League all day long.
We could do a podcast about Robbo.
Get him on one, Chris, if you've got his number. Yeah. We'll get him on. You know what I mean? It'd be class. It'd be class. Tell us about Car School with Anthony Kay and Pilkington. I'm sure that'll be a great episode.
Yeah.
Right, guys, do you want to know who mine is?
Yes, I do.
Then.
Right, so we need a penalty box predator, if you like, somebody who's decent in the area. Considering QPR concede a lot of goals from crosses into the box and headers, I'm going to go for the Brady Frost lookalike of 1992. I'm going to go for Ewan Roberts, one of my very favourites. And he was one of my favourites when I was a kid, and I've got absolutely no qualms in saying that. As a 10-year-old, I was a big Ewan fan. Although I used to want Starbucks hair, believe it or not. Well, you would believe that. I've still got it. But, Ewan Roberts, I'm going for this week. So we've gone back, Bill and Ted style. We've brought back for this game. I've gone for Ewan Roberts. Brady has gone for Gary Roberts. It's all Roberts, is this. And Chris has gone for Marcus Stewart. So We'll stick a poll out later. Tell us who you would bring back as well. And also tell us what name this feature should be. There's still a little room, although we do have a clear favourite, I think, even though it's got a little bit of opposition for me and my silly names. But there we go. Like I say, let us know what you think of that feature. And on to our next feature, where Brady chatted to Sam Taylor from QPR fan site Our Generation.
Right, I'm joined on the line now by Sam Taylor from the QPR fan site Our Generation. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming on, mate. So we've got the match on Saturday. Just wanted to ask you a couple of questions. So what have you kind of made of QPR's season so far?
It's been a bit up and down. I don't think we were expected to do much more than what we had. We lost, obviously, Eze, who was the driving force of our season last year, and we had another pretty busy transfer window. So, again, it was a pretty fresh team. But I think at times we've overperformed. We beat Forest on the first day, but we've also, I tend to use the term very nearly very good, because we tend to do pretty well, but then there's always something that brings us back. For example, we played the other week and we had a comfortable 3-0 lead, 3-1, and then we lost it, and then we were on edge for the rest of the game, thinking that we were going to lose again. So it's been up and down. We've overperformed, but we've also underperformed. It's quite QPR, in my opinion, to do that. But yeah, it's been a bit of a confusing one, really.
Yeah, it sounds a bit similar to us, where you're great one week, terrible the next, and it's all a bit over the place. So you talk about the kind of interesting start. It seemed like Mark Warburton, your boss, was under a bit of pressure earlier in the season. Has results kind of changed enough for those like calls for him to go quiet, or is it still a bit touch and go?
I think it was after we lost to Blackburn at home 3-1, and I think the fan base was getting a bit fed up, because he is a very, very consistent style of play. It just has very inconsistent results. And I think from my point of view, it seems to have quietened down a bit. And then obviously just yesterday we lost to Bristol City, when we essentially ran the game for 90 minutes and they had 2 shots and scored twice and beat us 2-1. So I think people are getting a bit fed up again, but I think there's more of a consensus now that a changing manager will probably do very little. I think we're just hoping that the team can find some consistency under Mark Warburton, rather than asking for someone to come and take his place, because I don't think that would do much good in itself.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. And you talk about the game yesterday, obviously disappointing to lose that. What are you expecting from the game against us on Saturday?
Just more. I think a big problem is we don't take our chances, and we do actually create a lot. So all I'm hoping is that we go out and get the result we deserve. If we go out and have a terrible game and we lose, then fair enough. Then we need to work on certain things. But it's incredibly frustrating when you're playing well but not getting anything, and that's our problem at the moment. So all I'm hoping is we can take our chances and actually capitalise on the ability that is within our team, give a good account of ourselves, and get what we deserve out of it.
Well, I mean, I was going to say here's hoping, but I suppose not for us in our case. So Chris Willock, I wanted to mention actually, because we were kind of linked to sign him all summer. Never really happened. Obviously, he was on loan last season, and he's at QPR now. How's he been doing so far? Have you been impressed?
He had a very, very quiet start. He had a few sub appearances and he was fine, didn't make any impact. But then the last few games, he had glimpses of real potential. Like he wasn't very good last night, but in our 2 games before then, he gave a really good account of himself. He looked very confident. He was going past players and he was taking them on, which he didn't do in his first few appearances. He has really good vision as well, which I didn't realise. He was putting in some really nice balls to areas I didn't even see were an option. And I rate him at the moment. He seems to be doing quite well, and he's someone who you can tell has the ability. It's just about getting the balance right and making sure that whoever's managing him is utilising his ability to as best we can. People were drawing Eze comparisons last week, but obviously it's a bit of a stretch. But I do think he is a player. He just needs to be played in the right way. I think he's given a good account of himself so far.
Well, that's nice to know, especially when we're struggling for wingers. Well done, Huddersfield. So yeah, just to touch on the game, I'm going to ask for a score prediction. You talked a little bit about the game earlier, how you see it going, but yeah, what do you think the result's going to be?
If we play the same way we did yesterday, I think we could come away with a pretty poor result, maybe a 2 or even 3-0, because we were just we were not clinical at all. But if it comes to it and we play and we can actually put our chances away, then it easily could be quite a high scoring game, because we tend to respond well to other people thrashing us. So if the team we're playing against tends to get a few, I can't see us just sitting down and lying. And I think we've had quite similar seasons, so maybe a 2-2 would be how I see it going.
Well, yeah. Here's hoping. I mean, we got thrashed at the weekend, so I hope you're right. Just before you do go, sorry, I realised I've kind of messed up my scheduling here with questions. Have you looked at much of Huddersfield? What have you kind of thought of us this season?
Honestly, not really, but judging from the way everyone's playing this season, I just think it's incredibly difficult to judge teams because the form is so inconsistent. You see teams like Wycombe being battered at the beginning of the season and then getting results against better teams in the top half. I think it's really difficult to judge teams this year, and especially with no fans and everything going on. But if Huddersfield are anything like us, which I'm sure there are many comparisons, as they seem to be quite a championship side at the moment, I'm sure they have a lot of ability, and I'm sure if it's utilised, I'm sure it could come out in the right way. But like I said, I've been trying to focus on the appalling state of my team rather than delving into the rest of the league, but I'm sure there are sides that can give us a run for our money, just like any team in this league, really.
Well, to say I put you on the spot there, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Really, we have the potential. We don't get it quite there sometimes, and then we're shocking the other. So it does sound like our two teams are similar. So I'll let you go anyway, Sam. But thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Okay, so Sam has provided his point of view, and now it's time for us to don David Wagner's blue baseball cap, Carlos's skinny chinos, and Mark Robbins' glowering expression as we try to predict what will happen this weekend. It's our predictions time, and yes, we will eventually get this prediction league up. If you do know a decent prediction league just for one game a week, then please let us know, and we'll set something up quickly. But yeah, so guys, this week, what are you going for? In terms of system, scoreline, I think we'll start with Chris.
Okay. System, I think he'll keep it the same. It would make sense. We didn't mention him, but Chair is an important player for them as well. He plays at number 10, like small, diminutive. So I think we'll need a 4-3-3 to have a defensive midfielder around him. Makes sense, maybe for that to be Hoggy. And then I think I've mentioned that I would try and bring Benza back. A little bit worried about centre-back against Dykes, to be honest. Edmonds Green, whilst he's got a lot of strengths and he's got a lot of potential, I wouldn't say physicality at this point is one of them. He's athletic, he's nimble, he's agile, he can defend space behind, but that's not really the prime objective with Dykes. So if he does play, I think Dykes would probably pull onto him quite a lot. So I'm not sure what the other options we've got there. Obviously, is Stearman injured.
Shindy's back, isn't he? So
Shindy's back, yeah, and it depends obviously which side you get. So yeah, that's a little bit of a worry. I think, like I said, I'd have Benza back in, and I made a lot of changes. And Benza, Karoma, one of Wardy, and obviously Campbell up top. And I don't think I've really said it before, but I'm probably, well, you've got Josh Karoma's fan club. I've been Lewis O'Brien's. He's not someone who was there when I was working there, but I love everything about him on the field. So I think Lewis is a big player every week, so I really like him. Look, I think this game, if you look, I think it's going to be tight first half. Out of 15 first halves QPR have had, they've only been behind 3 times and only in front twice, so 10 of them have been all square. But just after the second half starts, so the first 15 minutes after half time, they've only scored 1 and conceded 6 this season. I think it could be tight at half time, and I think we could run away with it in the second half. So I'm going to go 3-1 to Town.
Red House?
I like the confidence, Chris. I think I'd go with 4-3-3. Obviously, Corberan made a couple of changes in midweek. It could bring some players back. As we touched on, I think this is quite a winnable game, really, if we're on it. And we've got some more tricky games coming up. So I'd go Hamer and goal. I think it depends if Pippa's back or not. I mean, I hope he is. If he isn't, I would be worried about that right-back position, given the 3 behind Dykes, as we've touched on. So I'd actually put Edmonds Green there because he can play right-back. I think he'd be a bit more reliable defensively than Bacuna. I'd have Shindy if I can't have Edmonds Green, and I'd have Sarr and Toffolo, even though Sarr loves a slide tackle in the box, which, I feel like he seems to do that every game at home. Same midfield 3 out of Eiting, Hogg and O'Brien, but I've kind of touched on it. I think maybe bring Vallejo in. He needs to start playing at some point with our 5 subs. And then, Mbenza and Karoma on the wings. I think they're pretty much nailed on for the team sheet for me now. And I'd bring back Campbell in because he's actually been he's scored the same amount of goals as he did for the entirety of last season. And I still think Ward needs to get up to speed. So, QPR, they've only scored twice in 1 game away from home this season. So, again, I think if we take our chances, but I think it might be a bit nervy given how we got thrashed in midweek. So I think it'll be 2-1 win for Town.
Right, I've gone for the exact same team as you, Brady.
Right.
Even down to right back, Pieper, I think he's back in training now. I would pick him if he's fit. If he's not, I would go Edmonds Green as well, because Bacuna's apparently got a slight hamstring issue as well. And as you guys know, Dehaney's not really, I'm not a member of his fan club. There's no conch for Dehaney, let's just say. So I would pick that, and I would bring Campbell back in up front as well. I think he had a rest against Cardiff. Ward didn't really look up to speed, so Campbell has been doing. I think Campbell just needed taking out to freshen up, and I would bring him back in. Predictions wise, I'm nervous about this because I look at the 2 teams together, and I actually look at QPR, and I think if you could pick any side in this league who were tailor-made for us to beat, you look at QPR in many ways. Dykes is obviously an issue up front, but the way QPR play, the holes that they leave, I look at them and think, do you know what? We could beat these 2-0, 2-3-0. I'm going to go 2-0 Huddersfield. And the fact that I'm almost semi-confident in that really worries me. So, it strikes me full of fear, does that? So I'm going to go 2-0 Huddersfield, which is very worrying. And usually when I do that, we get battered. So, I've had to caveat that. Touch wood, rabbit's foot, whatever with a conch. And we can hopefully avoid any curses there. But yeah, I'm going to go for a Huddersfield win 2-0 and same side as you, 4-3-3. And the defensive midfielder, Hoggy, for me, has to sit on the chair, shall we say. I need to end it after that terrible pun, but there we go.
Perfect. What an end.
Yeah, so thanks you guys for joining us this week. Everybody else, let us know what you think the result's going to be, either via social media or on the YouTube comments. And hopefully we'll be back next time after celebrating a decent win. And look out for the main podcast episode as well, if indeed we do. So thank you very much, and we'll be back soon.
Oh, what a night. Late in May in 2017, Schindler scored, it was a heavenly dream. What a feeling, what a night. Oh, what a night. Wagner singing, we are Premier League. The greatest sight St. George's Square did see. What an evening, what a night. Oh, I got a funny feeling when he walks and a fence, and then the commentator yelled he takes that chance. Oh, what a night, lost so safe and mesmerizing me. Low, low charge and flattened all Chelsea, Stamford Bridge, oh what a night. Whoa, I got a funny feeling when he walks and a fence, and then the commentator yelled he takes that chance.